Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has returned from a five-nation visit to Europe. How are successive visits by both Chinese and American top diplomats affecting Europe? And China draws up new regulations on technology export controls. Will this affect TikTok's impending sale of its U.S. operations? Welcome to The Point, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Li Qiuyuan, sitting in for Liu Xin. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has just concluded his trip to Europe, during which he visited France, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, and Norway. Now, the visit comes at a time when the continent is still reeling from the coronavirus pandemic. The trip is to keep ties between China and the EU strong with a proposed new investment deal. So, what has this trip achieved? What is the significance to the timing of the visit, which comes on the heels of U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's trip? And how will the trip affect the trajectory of China-EU ties? To talk more about these questions, I'm now joined by Mr. James Early, CEO of Stansberry China, and also Mr. Cui Hongjian in Beijing. He's the head of the European Studies Department at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to you both. So let me first start with Mr. Cui here. A major aspect of Wang Yi's European visit was to push for this new investment deal with countries in the region. What are some of the aspects of this deal, and when is it expected to be finalized?
This BIT, and also is also called a comprehensive investment agreement, would be a very, I think, symbolic achievement between China and the EU once it finishes the negotiation this year. Because as we know, promised by leaders from both two sides last year, so this year will be very important for this agreement to reach the end. But of course, so far, as we understand, there's still some divergences between two sides. So I think once the time is coming, so I think there will be very, very big pressure for both sides to get a final compromise to help the finish of the negotiation. Once this agreement achieved, I think it will give more confidence to the market, firstly, and then give some more confidence to both two sides, especially to European side, to stabilize its cooperation with China in economy, in investment. And also it will also give some benefits to Chinese side. As we know, in recent years, there are some drop of Chinese investment towards Europe. Once there is an agreement between two sides, certainly they will give some more very, very, strong legal support to any Chinese investment in Europe. So finally, it would be a very beneficial thing once the deal is done for China, for European Union, and also for the recovery of all the economy, especially in the current situation.
Now, Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Monday denounced Czech Senate Speaker Milo Vystrčil's visit to Taiwan, saying that any effort challenging the One China principle will pay a heavy price. Mr. Cui, again, Wang Yi also said that Taiwan is an inalienable part of Chinese territory. And challenging the One China principle on Taiwan question is an attempt to turn against the 1.4 billion Chinese people and an action of breaching international law and regulations. But how do you read such a strong tone made by the foreign minister from China?
As we know, this Taiwan issue is not an issue between China and the European countries before. But of course, this time, I think the visit by Czech Republic politician has been regarded as a challenge to this, the political basis of the China-Czech Republic relations. Of course, I think for Chinese perspective, it could not be expanded to some other European countries, because once this one China policy has been damaged, it will give a very, dangerous, sign to the relations between China and any European countries. But of course, I think now the very important fact for some changes recently in European countries, especially in Czech Republic, undoubtedly it's the United States, did something as we know, that this Minister of Health of the United States visited Taiwan, it gives some, I think, very wrong signal to some European politicians. So I think for China to have some cooperation with Taiwan in the framework of WHO is available, and China also try to give some more assistance to Taiwan, but it will not be the reason or the cause for any other countries to intervene the internal affairs, especially on the Taiwan issue. As we know, it has been regarded as a co-interest of China. So I think this attitude from Mr. Wang towards this issue as clear as possible, and it's also a consistent attitude of Chinese government on this issue.
Now, another hotspot issue is, of course, 5G and Huawei. So, Mr. Early, let me bring you into this. The foreign minister, that visit comes amid the U.S. mounting pressure on the EU to ban Huawei from the region's 5G market. And during this trip, Foreign Minister Wang Yi has voiced against the Cold War mindset, calling for win-win cooperation and joint efforts in economic development. Well, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, has said that France would not ban Huawei, but favors European providers for security reasons after meeting with Wang Yi. I mean, how do you see the stance of France, and what about other European countries?
I think that's the big question here. First of all, I just want to say I wouldn't want to be Wang Yi right now. He's had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I think 5G is probably a metaphor for what's going on writ large here. China looks at Europe and sees some things starting to unravel a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. They see a possibility of a Biden presidency, and with that may come a more coherent and consistent U.S. foreign policy, that other nations will buy into more. And so, like Taiwan was mentioned, other nations are starting to engage a little bit more, and so they want to kind of jump on this before it gets to be too extreme. I mean, France has always been kind of the isolated man of Europe. They're not quite the joiners like everyone else. Obviously, UK pulled away more directly. They're closer allies with the U.S. France is maybe hedging its bets, but I mean, look, we're not in the closed-door meetings. We don't know exactly what's going on, but this is basically an attempt to stop what seems like some momentum going in the wrong direction from China's perspective. I can't say exactly how it's going to shake out, but it's probably not quite as favorable as China wants, but they're trying to act aggressively now to minimize the damage.
And of all the countries Wang Yi visited, Italy is the first major European country that has signed the Memorandum of Understanding regarding China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2019. Mr. Cui, what sort of impact has this agreement had on the two countries' relationship thus far?
I think China appreciates the efforts from Italy to work together with China in the framework of the BRI, and also this signature of MOU of cooperation in the BRI give a very, good new starting point for the cooperation between China and Italy. So I think that's also one big reason why this time Minister Wang chose Italy as the first stop of his visit in Europe. But of course, I think for Italy, it has a very good opportunity to have more cooperation with China in the BRI. As we know, as a coastal nation, Italy has a lot of the chances to cooperation with China in the port infrastructure, and also in energy and some other. And we can find that this time it has been covered. I mean, those areas in this agreement between China and Italy. But of course, I think the Italy's attitude towards the BRI has also some responses from European countries or some other Western countries, because it has been regarded as too close with China, like that. But I don't think that that will be a political issue for Italy to be part of the BRI, because as the Italian government, as clear as possible, say that it looks for some more opportunities by cooperating with China in commerce, in economic, in trade, but it will not damage its political tie with some other European countries. I think this attitude from Italian government is as smart as possible, and it's also as practical as possible. So I think it would be welcomed by China and also by some other countries. We want to say that the political is political, but the politics is not everything.
Yeah, this pragmatic or practical approach, this is at least the tone we're getting from Italy now. Italy's foreign minister said in June that the United States is its main ally. It cherishes the United States values like its ideals of democracy, but it also values its relationship with China due to commercial ties. So, Mr. Early, I want to also get your take on this cooperation at the state level between China and Italy. I mean, the U.S. has become increasingly hawkish towards China due to its ideological differences. But how will this affect Italy's views of China and also other countries? Are other countries facing the same dilemma to choose between China and the United States?
Yeah, I think for better or for worse, that's going to be the case, Julia, over time, and that's why China's trying to move quickly. Right now, Italy has to negotiate more with China. All the European countries have relative independence right now, but I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more of a bifurcation. Like, if you're in the EU, this means you abide by a certain set of behaviors, certain set of principles, or not. So in other words, by establishing the relationship it wants with China right now, Italy may be being more strategic, because if it doesn't, and if it just tends to follow the status quo, there's a good chance that status quo is going to migrate away from China. That's what we're seeing, quite frankly. Again, like it or not, but if we look at the U.S., Canada, UK, Europe, India, Australia, Japan, there is generally a decoupling in the world. That is just the reality of what's happened in the coronavirus epidemic, and the response to that globally has accelerated that, frankly. But it was already in place even before that. So China and the countries that want to deal with China are trying to establish those stronger ties right now before that momentum starts to move off in the other direction.
Yeah, about that decoupling and how to respond to it, Mr. Cui, there has been much speculation that the real purpose of Wang Yi's visit is to ensure ties with the EU remain intact as China-U.S. ties continue to sour. Is that also your assessment?
We have to raise a question. So once there is not a United States, once there is not a competition between China and United States, so there is not a China-Europe relations. So I think the first purpose and the major purpose for this Mr. Wang's visit to Europe is to look for more opportunity for China-Europe relations. As we always try to find out more internal dynamic for China-Europe cooperation. And of course, I do believe that objectively there will be some effect on the China-U.S. or U.S.-EU relations. Also, we know there is some very, very big issues between China and the EU. For example, how to uphold this multilateralism. Once both China and the EU were facing a challenge from unilateralism, mostly the unilateral behaviors of the United States. I think both China and Europe, we are the victims for any kind of unilateral behaviors. So I think objectively, once Minister Wang has more and more communication with his counterpart in Europe, with European leaders, certainly I think there will be more clear roadmap for both China and EU. How could we do something more to protect this multilateral system, and then how could we avoid any damage from unilateral behavior and policies. So finally, I think that no matter what's the response from outside, from media, I think China will insist its policy to find out more cooperation with Europe.
All right, certainly a very, very unique trip taken by the foreign minister at a special time. Many thanks to James Early, CEO of Stansberry China, and also Mr. Cui Hongjian, head of the European Studies Department at the China Institute of International Studies.